The biggest problem for new day traders is very simple: being gun shy. I know this happens to so many traders. We've seen plenty of YouTubers that live stream that identify very, very good setups. They wait for the setup to basically form. They identify the entry. The market moves in their favor. They don't pull the trigger. And guess what? They then wait and wait. And then all of a sudden, they end up jumping in once the move is already over, or they jump in at a point where the market moves back up and stops them out. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've never done this and that I still don't have this exact issue. This is a big problem for almost every type of trader: a beginner trader, expert trader, every trader out there. And I want to have a little heart-to-heart today talking with you guys. If you're watching this video, I'm sure you've experienced this exact emotion. You identify the perfect setup, you wait, you wait, you wait, and then all of a sudden the market pulls back, it goes up, it crashes, whatever it is. The play actually works out, and then guess what? You're like, well, when you're waiting and you're waiting, and now you have this confirmation, and then you jump in at the worst possible point. Once the market is already broken down, once it's already broke out, whatever it is, you end up chasing the move, right? FOMO is real, my friends. The FOMO is very, very real. That emotion of getting that confirmation once you identify, like in your brain, you're like, okay, I see this setup. I'm going to wait for this level to break. Okay, I'm going to wait. It ends up breaking. You're like, I'm not going to jump in. I'm not going to jump in. I'm not going to jump in. And then all of a sudden it goes higher, and you're like, okay, I'm going to jump in. You jump in at the top, it pulls back, it stops you out, and then another pullback happens, and then it goes higher. So how do we fight this? Like, how do we fight this emotion to basically not jump in, right? The FOMO is created because you identified that there was a good setup, right? You identified there's a good setup and you don't pull the trigger. So what do we need to do to get through this? Like, how do we evolve? How do we grow as a trader to get through this emotion where we don't end up getting in at the right time? We end up getting in at the wrong time. I think the best thing that you can do as a new day trader, or as a trader in general, is to make sure if you identify a setup and you see it, it's working out, and you're like, okay, it's there, you've got to take a trade. You just got to take a trade. No matter what happens, you take a trade, you put your stop, whatever it is, you take the freaking trade, my friends. Now, that doesn't mean you got to go in full size. It doesn't mean you got to trade whatever. Like, you could trade micros, trade one contract, whatever it is, whatever your rules are, you can trade small size. But I really, really think that you have to force yourself to take those trades. That way, you're going to remove a lot of that FOMO. If the trade works out and it goes higher and you didn't get in at the perfect point, that's okay, because you're like, hey, I still got in. You know, I got my small size, whatever it is, like a small risk. The point is that you need to be able to reward yourself for identifying a good setup, identifying a good entry. If you're not doing this, if you're not taking those good entries, you're not taking those good setups, you're creating a bad emotional response to these moves. Because after the good setup happens, after it goes higher, you end up jumping in. You end up getting stopped out. Now, emotionally, you're like, damn it. Why did I do that? Why did I get in? Right? You now are basically rewarding yourself in a negative way. You're creating a negative response to being able to identify a good setup. And I see this happen all the time with the Market Flow Trader community. You know, we've got 1,200 members in the Market Flow Trader community. So I get all types of feedback, and people are like, you know, I have a problem. I get stopped out on the Patrick Wieland breakouts, whatever it is. And I'm like, well, where do you get in it? They're like, well, you know, I wait and I wait, and then all of a sudden it breaks out, and then I end up getting in and it pulls back and I get stopped out. And I'm like, well, that's not the trade. That's not the strategy. There's a strategy, right? Like, we have a plan, we have a target, we have our entry, we have our exits, we have all these things happening. So if you're not getting in when you're supposed to, either you've got too much size, too much risk, you've got too much emotion, too much fear created the idea that you're going to be wrong. Remember, every single trade you take, there's a chance that you're going to be wrong. So is it better for you to take a good setup that you identify as a good setup? You take a good entry. Is it better to do that than it is to basically chase a move, to FOMO into the move, to take a bad entry? You're creating negative responses to actually doing what you need to do. Being able to follow the plan, being able to see the setup, get in on the setup, take the profit, make the move. So going forward, I'm really going to focus on this as well. I do this a lot in the live stream where I call out a setup and I'm like, I'm not going to take it. I need to just take it. Small size, whatever it is, take it, one contract, take to whatever, micros, take small size, at least that way, if it works out, you get rewarded mentally, emotionally. You're like, look, I did the job. I identified the setup. I took the trade. I followed the plan. I made the money. If I get stopped out, I'm like, hey, look, at least I still pulled the trigger. I pulled the trigger. I got into the trade, my friends. And you've got to be able to do this over and over and over and over to find success as a day trader. You got to know that you're going to take losers. You're going to have winners. But if you're not getting in when you're supposed to get in, you're going to have a very big chance of having a lot more losers than the winners. So if you see a breakout, you see a breakdown, you see a level, you identify your setup, take the frickin' trade. Take the frickin'. So the lesson here is very simple, my friends. If you're going to trade, you got to take the trade. If you're going to identify a setup, you're going to draw a line on the chart. I've seen many people do this live on YouTube. They draw a line. They're like, okay, if we break through this line, I'm going to take a trade. The market breaks through the line. They don't take the trade. I mean, I do this. This happens to everybody. But we really got to stop it because, again, you're just creating this like negative emotion to not taking a good setup. When the market gives you a good setup, there is no reason to not take the good setup. Like I said, trade the micros, trade smaller size, whatever it is. If you don't feel good about it, just trade smaller. Trade the size that makes you feel good about the risk to the reward. People ask me all the time, like, how do you figure out your risk? How do you figure out your reward? Well, simply you look at the setup and you go, hey, look, if I'm going to get in at this level, my stop's here, I'm going to risk 100. I'm going to look for a $200 profit. You got to be able to just analyze this setup. I'm like, oh, I like the move. It's all working. The market's doing what I want it to do, is trending, whatever it is. I want to get in on this action. I want to reward myself that I had the patience to wait for this setup, that I identified this setup, and now I'm going to get the freaking reward. I want the freaking reward, my friends. Why am I not going to reward myself for following the freaking plan? All right? Follow the plan. Get in, get out, get in, get out. Do it over and over and over 1,000 times. Become a consistent day trader. That's the goal. What are we here for? We're not here to draw lines on charts and watch the market move through the lines. We're here to identify the setups and then take the trade. Take the trade. Take the trade. If you guys enjoy these videos, do me one big favor. Hit that like button, subscribe button. I'll talk to you guys later on.